is exciting. Elizabeth and I had a chance to talk earlier this week, but now we have faces. So that's
I know, I was thinking the same thing. I got to hear Aleta's lovely voice, and she gently nurtured me through the different questions, and now I get to see her. It's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because you have some wonderful stories. And I guess we start at the very beginning. How did you become involved with what was then the Johnson Intern Program?
Yeah, so this is what's going to date me. Think back to before cell phones were in common use. In fact, I didn't even have a cell phone. I was all the way out in Los Angeles, having just completed the Episcopal Urban Intern Program out there. And I was coming back to North Carolina for a process of discernment. And Bishop Ann, who was my college chaplain, told me that Chapel of the Cross was thinking about starting some similar program. And she said, you might want to reach out to them and just talk. She does these little nudges.
And I hear that.
And so what happened was, as I drove back across the country, I stopped at different payphones and different hotel room phones, and I called Stephen Stanley and Stephen Elkins Williams as we moved across the country. And they were both just super fantastic and saying, yes, we're really interested in doing this. We're not quite sure yet whether we're going to or when we're going to, but it's great that you're coming. And when you get here, give us a call. So it was really one of those kind of wild rides across the country as I'm driving back and trying to arrange times to be on the phone at the same time. But I did arrive. The board, I guess it was before they were a board, but the discerning group did discern that this was in fact where their energy and desire was. And so I think in November of that year, I started on working with them as we dreamed up the Johnson Intern Program. So that's how I got involved.
Well, and I think both Bishop Ann and Stephen Elkins Williams are on this Zoom, so thank them both for being at the birthing, as it were.
Absolutely.
Bringing you over back to North Carolina to do that good work. So that's wonderful. You told me about what an intentional process that early board went through, and you went through in sort of forming this program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it was a very intentional process. It wasn't a desire to replicate what had been done in other areas. It was a desire to be authentic to who the character of Chapel of the Cross, that community is, and authentic to who Margaret Johnson was in terms of being a lifelong learner, being located right on the UNC campus and so involved in that community there that the discernment came to the point where it was that we should have three kind of key elements, which were service out in the world, education, kind of continued ongoing nurturing education to prepare for that service or go alongside that service, and then intentional community living. And so that was an amazing charge. And I had an amazing board who had so many connections that we were able to get up and running. I think it was November was when I started, and we had the first group in August. And that we had interns who were taking a class together at UNC, and then they took a class at Duke under Professor Michael Battle. And I'm not sure that either institution really knew that we were doing that, but the professors did, and they were fantastic. It was a lot about calling on the larger community to nurture this new community that we were birthing.
When you told me about those classes, I was like, oh, I don't know that that could ever happen again, but I'm glad it happened when it could. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then some of the things you all learned and some of the ways the program changed during your time. You mentioned in particular how the mentors came to happen. And of course, we still have mentors with JSC. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Stephen, thank you for putting that in there. I couldn't remember her whole history, but I remembered that education was key, and she was her legacy allowed us to start the program, which is why it's named Johnson Intern Program, or now Johnson Service Corps. Getting there. Sorry, can you circle back around to the question?
No, absolutely. Some of the things you all developed and put in.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And we had talked about the mentors, which thrilled me because that's still such an important part of JSC.
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. So I remembered my experience out in Los Angeles. Community living is challenging. It is really challenging. And I'm seeing smiles across the screen. It really asks a lot of you. And also the service work was challenging in a very different way. And I remember that the board was interested in this not being a kind of let's drop them into the deep end and it's sink or swim. Let's figure out a way we can come alongside our interns and support them the whole way through. And so that's when we decided to ask people to serve as mentors, adults out in the community who were just going to walk alongside each intern. And each intern mentor pair did it their own way, which I loved. I remember an early intern mentor pair used to meet and go for a walk around the lake at lunchtime. And other mentors did it differently, but it was amazing to me hearing from the first year of interns how impactful, important, influential that relationship was on their whole experience of that year. So that was one of the pieces that I was really proud of for the Johnson program.
And I love that story because the language you use around mentors is very similar to the language and the relationships we hope for even today. So your legacy continues, it lives on. You also told me some really wonderful stories, some memories, funny memories and stories that you still look back on with particular joy. I'm wondering if you could share one or two of those.
All right. Well, if there are folks on the screen, apologies. But the first year, I do remember we went to the beach and went on retreat at the beach. And it was a retreat where it was in October. So it was a few months into the year, into the program year. And so we were really focusing on community development. And okay, you've had an experience, had a chance to live in community. Now let's really focus in on how we want to develop that community. And so to talk about communication within the community, I challenged my group of interns to set up a tent inside the beach house. And I told them that they were going to sleep in that tent. But the caveat was only one person could see the tent and talk, but that person couldn't touch the tent. Another person was blindfolded and could touch the tent, but couldn't talk. And then a third person could see and touch the tent. No. Yeah, something like that. But couldn't touch the tent and couldn't talk. And so at any rate, they had to work together to create this tent. And it was hilarious. It ended up being something that was kind of more like this way leaning, and it took them about 45 minutes, and there was frustration and laughter and delight the whole way through. And I have to say, at that retreat, we had myself, Stephen Stanley, who's the chaplain, and a board member with us. And the three of us did it. It killed us because we wanted to help them and we kept wanting to jump in, but we had to be quiet. But it was also trying to hold back the laughter because we didn't want to discourage the community too. But I will never forget the looks on their faces when they pulled off their blindfolds and were able to see the tent and the shape that it was in. And then another, sorry, I'm still here. My camera turns off after an hour on Zoom. So.
Which is a gift in some ways, but we're going to be back with us.
And then another time was similar. It was, we were doing a trust walk. And again, we were at the beach. We were this was the second year. We were with a different group of interns, and all the interns were blindfolded except for one. And so they all had to hold on to the person in front of them and walk around. And we tried very hard not to have interns wandering off into the woods. It was also nighttime and we were walking out to the beach. So all these different things, but, oh, Jack just said that we've forgotten about that. Yeah. And so it was a lot of fun. One of the aspects that I tried as a director to remind my communities of was to remember to be playful with one another, because the work is hard and living in community can be really hard, and it's just all physically draining. And so it's important to remind yourselves and each other to be playful and find those moments to play together. And so that was part of what I encouraged them to do on retreat as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you now have a very full life in Atlanta. There's a pandemic puppy involved, I believe.
Yes.
Can you tell everyone about what you've been doing since your time with Johnson Intern?
Sure. So I left Johnson Intern Program to go to seminary, and have served at a church in New York City on the Upper East Side, and then 2 churches here in Atlanta, All Saints Atlanta and St. Luke's in Atlanta. I've been doing that for the past 15 years. And I have 2 daughters, an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. And yes, we are a foster. Oh my gosh, what is my camera doing? That was not an hour. I promise I've not been talking that long. We are a foster fail. The girls talked me into fostering a puppy in January. Her name is Fig. She was found discarded in a box right before Christmas, so she's named after Figgy Pudding. And she is a delight and a hot mess and lots of energy, but she is absolute love.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, before we wrap up our conversation together, I'm wondering if there is any wish you would have for what's now the Johnson Service Corps moving forward and moving ahead into the next 20 years.
I just have to say, I'm beyond delighted that to see all these different faces on the screen, many of whom I don't know. Oh, some of them I do. Waddy, hi. Oh, that's fantastic. Sorry. I am just so delighted at the growth of the program. I am delighted at the different ways that it has shifted and changed with each different director's personality and little thumbprint or fingerprint on the program. And I'm thrilled that it is continuing to serve both Durham and Chapel Hill and the world, but also an opportunity of a place where young adults can land and start to learn who they are and learn how or discover how they want to engage in the world and be challenged both in community and in faith, and have their gifts developed. And so I'm beyond excited that that space exists, and I hope that you all continue to support it. I'm still here. I hope Johnson Service Corps continues to be that gift. And while it would be great if it expands, I also want to keep it small, because I think that is also one of the unique aspects to the program of there's lots of opportunity to nurture and nourish each intern or each Corps member. And so I wish that as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership then, your leadership now. And I do hope that you feel how the seeds you and that board at the beginning planted, that leadership at the beginning planted, how it continues to be a part of this community. So thank you.
Absolutely.